I really wanted to work in television, and a news publicist job came up at SBS Television. I called Mom, and I was like, I blew it. I'm in tears. I never want to watch the news again. I wrote a thank you card, and then I prayed, and then I let it go. And 2 weeks later, I got a call, and they said, you got the job. I found out later, because I said, why did you give me this job? And she said, and I could tell she would be really good, but you were so excited and so enthusiastic, and that thank you card sealed the deal. Welcome back to the podcast. I have today with me Wendy Hayes. Welcome, sister.
Thank you.
Anytime. Today we have our first book club. I think this is, are we starting a book club?
I didn't know that. Good to know.
Good to know. Well, should we say what we actually did? We said, let's bring on some of our favorite inspirational books.
Yes.
And we each said we'll bring 3.
More than 3.
There's more than 3.
Yeah.
There's
and I
definitely
actually
more than 3.
left 3 more at home.
I left about 5. Yeah. It was really hard. We didn't show each other, so this will be really fun to see what books have we brought. And we need to do a disclaimer, though, because if you are familiar with some of these books, some of these are very Christian, very popular in the Christian world. Some of these are not. You will not find them in your Christian bookstores, potentially. But I just want to say I have learned so much from people who are Christians, but also people who aren't technically Christians, but have given me really great strategies in confidence in business and how to show up. And so I really just want to be honest about that and say these are the type of content we read and subscribe to. Some of it, there might be a little bit of language in it, but we're just going to be sharing with you what we've learned from certain authors. And just because we're saying we like this part of what they've said doesn't mean we subscribe to their business or what they believe in. We're just being honest about what we've learned along the way. Yeah?
Very true.
And I honestly believe, I don't want to pretend like I live in a vacuum. And I think God, I know He speaks through so many people through different ways. And that's what I love about Him. And because I worked in the mainstream for so long, there were a number of people who sewed into me who were not Christians, who I learned around the board table of how to run a meeting and how to speak up for myself. And they weren't Christians. And yet they were righteous people. And they knew how to operate a meeting, and they knew how to tell somebody off without telling somebody off. So those people have helped me immeasurably. So it would be hypocritical of me not to talk about these type of people who I learned from along the way.
And I guess on the back of that too, I know both of us have also helped people along the way who weren't Christians, who may have spoken out, but we still help them professionally along the way because
that's who we are.
That's who we are.
That's who we are. It's not a club.
No.
It's no. We're very happy to learn from anyone who has something good to say. And it's funny. I had a neighbor. Do you remember? It's your neighbor. And he had just started a business course. And I said, "Oh, have you heard of John Maxwell?" And he said, "No." And I said, "You should get this business book for John Maxwell. It's one of his first ones." And he said, "Well, who is this guy?" And I said, "Well, look, he is a Christian, but he's really well known." And he said, "I don't care if he's a Christian. Does it work? Is he successful?"
I remember him saying, "As long as it works, I don't care who they are."
Exactly. As long as it works.
I remember John Maxwell even saying when he first started doing seminars, all these guys in suits who weren't Christian kept showing up. And he's going, and he was, why? What's happening? And when they go, "Yeah, we don't care if you're a Christian. We just want to know if it works.
Why are you successful?
Yeah.
If this is part of your success, I want to know about it." And I love that. All right. So
you want to
start.
Okay.
Number 1. Oh, Maxwell.
John Maxwell.
Great segue.
I know.
Hello.
I know. It was the Laws of Leadership, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. I think if you've never read it, you should definitely.
And you don't have to be in a leadership position. I think that's one of the things John Maxwell's
He talks about the circle of influence. Yeah. And I think for me, that was such a big thing because I'm not necessarily in leadership roles in the past. And but he really leans into your influence. And I loved that. And I really related to that and have used it so many times when I really wanted to start leading and being more professional.
He's an amazing communicator. If you ever want to do better at meetings, understand the dynamics of people, he is just the cornerstone. So that's wonderful. Okay, I'll go next. Let's see. Dream Big, Bob Goff.
I love him.
Isn't he so happy? He's so happy. He's just so happy. And actually, I bought Michael the kids version of this. There's a beautiful kids version. Yeah. And it's actually this for children. Yeah. And I love it probably more than he does. I'm like, "Look, Michael, you can be whatever you want to be." And he's like, "Okay." But it's those foundations. I need them at every level. I need it at every level. And it really is. He's got such beautiful humor about how to go for things, how to pray big. It really is. This is how to pray big. And no matter what I'm going through, I kind of need that really big reminder. And it does have a few coaching steps in there as well, which is really fun. I'll tell you this. He has put his mobile number in there for you to call him.
That's
he
right.
said, I'm busy all the time, but I get calls from people all over the world. I've tried to call him once and it didn't go through, but I'm going to try again. Bob, look out for me. But I mean, that's the kind of guy he is. So anyway, if you just need some inspiration, some really good godly inspiration, I think that's a good one to go to.
Okay, I have had this. This is actually my book from when I was a teenager. Joyce Meyer.
Do you remember Barbara's original Battlefield of the Mind?
No.
This isn't that, but she had it. It was like everyone had it in the 90s.
I think it had a different cover.
It had a different cover. I think her face was bigger.
Yeah. Look, who's going to say what about marketing in the 80s and 90s, right?
Whether you're Christian or not, this is a powerful book.
So good.
It was I think it was one of the first Christian books that got very practical about mind and thoughts and what happens to us.
And about prayer. Like, that is, it is what it says it is, Battlefield of the Mind. I have revisited this so many times, but I remember getting it as a teenager and still coming back to it. There was one talking about a passive mind. And I think I've had to, unfortunately, go back to that a few times of going, are you being so passive here? Are you being spiritually passive? Are you being passive with your thoughts? We're told to hold our thoughts captive and through spiritually. So I had never read anything like that. And I think it was my late teens.
And it's just very clear.
Yes.
It's not, and I think there's a lot of science now that will back this up, but there was nothing like that at the time.
No.
And I just love the simplicity of the message, which is where your thoughts go, where your focus goes, your energy flows.
Yes.
Like that's really the bottom line of it. The new age market will take that. But the truth is, God has said, like, we are in charge of our mind. And you may not think that because thoughts come up all the time that aren't, but, we were talking about before, is it edifying?
Yes.
Is it godly? Is it loving? Is it truthful? If it's not, why are you focusing on this?
Well, is it Dr. Caroline Leaf?
Yes.
She's a
scientist.
Christian scientist, faith-based scientist that would kind of speak a lot more to this today. Whereas maybe Joyce didn't have that at the time.
I think what was so powerful is that Joyce did it from her experience. And I mean, we were raised with Barbara who could speak. She's like, this is what God has done for me. And through studying the scriptures, I can see how this has worked. And she was one of the first people who was really a lay minister who said, this is how it got me out of depression. Yes. This is how it helped me deal with the trauma I had as a young child. And so if you ever, are looking for, what, my mind's just not right. I'm not feeling mentally strong here. Go to the Bible, absolutely. But this is a really good guide to help you build yourself in that way and to help you get mentally strong again. Because that's the one thing the devil will he will attack if you do not have a strong
field day.
He has
a field day with it.
Yeah, he does. So, that's so funny. We both look at us. Our minds are in sync.
What's your book, Rachel?
The Power of One More, Ed Mylett. Oh my goodness. Firstly, shout out to Ed Mylett, who is going to know me one day. I'm just going to speak that. I'm going to work with him one day because he is brilliant. He is one of the biggest business players, actually, and he's got a huge podcast. You may listen to his after you listen to this. No, but it's honestly brilliant. He's amazing. And he is a Christian. He's a very public Christian. And he's probably become more public in his faith in the last few years, I'd say.
I would agree. He's so respectful and eloquent and yet really knows what he's going on about, but just so humble. And you don't always see that for people in his caliber.
If you have a business or you want to go to the next level in your business or job, he is the perfect mentor. And some of the material he gives away for free, I have had to pay thousands of dollars to sit into rooms for. So there's real generosity, and you're going to really learn some strategies to help you, whether it's selling or connecting or know what to do or know how to scale a business. He's been there. So that's number one. And I think he breaks it down really simply. And it's funny the people we connect with, isn't it? People who've perhaps had some struggles growing up, but it's really simple. And the whole premise behind his book is, can you do one more of that? I'm ready to go home. I don't want to do one more call. Can you just do one more call each day? Can you just do one more push-up for those who do? Anyway, maybe one day I'll do one of those. Anyway, but it's really simple because it's actually the edge. it's one more that will give you the edge.
Well, it not only is the edge, but he's giving the edge from a Christian perspective. He's a professional Christian businessman. And one of the verses he had, which was Psalms 24, may he give you the desires of your heart and make all your plans succeed. And I love that he's unapologetic about, I want nice things, but I'm doing it in the right way and still in that humble, still balanced. And it's hard to find that.
Okay, Wendy, you need to go next.
All right. So hence the disclaimer.
This is why we did the disclaimer.
Is big money energy.
He's not a Christian that we know
Not
of.
a Christian. So there's some language, but the way he does business, the way he does life, I just really, really respect him.
He's very honest too.
Yeah. He's super confident, but honest about that he's not always feeling confident, but he just does it anyway.
I've had the most strategies about confidence from that book. And I'll give you one that really stuck with me was when he was a broke real estate agent.
Oh, that was good.
And he started being able to, get in the doors and work with some pretty high profile buyers. Yeah. And he knew he had to look apart. And he said, no, I just didn't feel confident. I'm walking in with these people who have millions of dollars and I'm struggling to pay my rent. And so he went and he bought a fake, what was it? It was a fake Rolex. He said it was fake. It used to turn my skin green. He said, but it was so I had a confidence suit. And we all have that. I have my little blazers. I have my things. And he goes, I put it on and it kind of transforms me into this Superman.
Yes.
So what's your Rolex? What do you need to feel you belong in that room? And that's people would say, particularly when they're like, you belong in the room. I'm like, but I don't feel it. Well, what do you need to be able to feel it? And it was such a simple little thing, but I loved that because it was honest of like, no, you're not going to go and buy a Rolex when you're, struggling like that. But what can I do to give me the feeling of such wealth and belonging and prominence? So anyway, that was one of the standouts for me.
Well, mine was manage your work PTSD and stop playing the blame game, like almost with yourself.
That hurts.
So for me, and I love that, like it's all about the big picture.
He goes into all of it because we give so much of ourselves when we do it.
Women do that.
Women do that a lot more. But he does.
Yeah, he gives everything.
He gives everything.
You can see that.
Yeah, and you can see what that looks like, particularly in the real estate game, which we are not in, thank goodness. But it's interesting to see from the very start what it takes to go to that level. And some of those strategies, they work.
Yeah.
Okay, The Science of Getting Rich. I'd never heard of this book before. It was when I started leaning into, I had my own business and professional development, and that's a whole different world, whether or not it's faith-based. But actually, Ed even recommends this book, Wallace D. Wattles. It seems to be something that a lot of rich people know about. But all this it was a book written in the 1900s, very early 1900s, and it's a formula for getting wealthy. But a lot of it's biblically based. He talks about scriptures all the time, and it's everything from visioning wealth. And I think the mindset that a lot of us were raised with, particularly if you were raised in church, is that wealth is a bad thing. And it's not. And if you look at the scriptures, it's not a bad thing. Anything that owns you or that you're serving more than God, that's a bad thing. Anything that becomes an idol is a bad thing. But God wants you to make the most of everything he has given you. And I never heard this before. How can you make the most of yourself if you're not wealthy? How can you not help more people if you're not wealthy? That is some of the challenges that come out of this book, and it challenged me, but it's something that I don't want to, is the guy a Christian? I don't even know, but he uses a lot of biblical scriptures and references in it. It has helped me a lot with my mindset around wealth. It's not a bad thing as long as it doesn't own you. And yes, I want nice things. I'm not going to apologize for that, but not at any cost either. So, and it's just giving us freedom to know whatever you really, really desire, God has a way for that to happen. And I love anything with a formula, and there's a formula in there too. So I would really encourage anybody who maybe you're struggling with that money mindset we talk about to start with that book. It has been a real game changer for me.
Love that book too. So the other one I had was Atomic Habits, and by James Clear. It's pretty popular. One of the things that I loved about it was obviously it talks about time management and being kind of like a time ninja. It was just so powerful and really challenged me when I was actually doing the florist business, is when I cottoned on to it a lot more and really had a really close look at where all my time was going. And it was so helpful, when you have so many jobs, doing your own business, your time is your most valuable asset. And he really spotlights that. and challenges you of what you're doing with it.
One of the changes I made when I read that is I bought a stepper from Kmart for like $50 that Michael's obsessed with. But anyway, moving that in front of the TV.
Yes.
So not putting it away or putting your gym clothes out on the bed or on the living room, basically removing all barriers to doing the thing you need to do. That's kind of it. So just saving even 2 minutes a day.
Time Ninja, like you have to do a time audit, and it's so
if
powerful.
If you improve 1% a day, over time, you will, win the thing or run the marathon or whatever it is, or, and it's almost like that one more. If you make one phone call a day, what difference could that make to your business? And so there's real science behind that, which is super exciting.
Yes.
What have we got next, Wendy?
We were going to do books. I was like, you can't not bring your book.
I was like, should I bring my own book?
Yes,
That's so uncomfortable.
Should.
Okay,
yes,
well, Wendy, tell us about this book.
One of my favorite things in here, and it's no big surprise, but how you used to bring brownies to work.
Yeah, I got that from Barbara.
Yeah, but you do, you don't have to have a hissy fit when things go your way.
I still need to relearn that.
An email is nice. A card is nicer, going the extra mile. You getting that job, remember, it was like your first big job.
That's right. It was.
You gave a handwritten note after you kind
because I've blown the interview. This is the truth. I wrote this book when I was still working in television, but it was all the things that helped me because I wasn't raised in a professional environment. I didn't go to work with my parents who worked in an office. I didn't have that, and I didn't realize how much kids are already exposed to that by the time they go into a workplace. I was not. So I had to learn a lot very quickly. And you're right. So I really wanted to work in television, and a news publicist job came up at SBS Television. And I was like, this is the job. I have to get this. And I didn't just blow the interview. It was like one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And I even remember the question. They're like, Rachel, please tell us 2 things that are happening in the global news right now. Guys, there was a presidential election happening that week with Obama, who had just won the presidency. I couldn't think of a thing. There had been a war declared. And I was like, yeah, I think I couldn't. It was for a global news organization. I could not think of one news story that was happening. And we just had our first African-American president. Anyway, it was bad. So that is clearly traumatized in my heart. And I walked out, and I knew it was so bad. The woman who walked me out, and I just said, well, that didn't go well. And she just said, oh, I think we never do as badly as we think we do. That was what she said. It was so bad. But I went home. I cried. I know. I called Mom, and I was like, I blew it. I'm in tears. I never want to watch the news again. And she said, write a thank you card. And I was like, what? She goes, that's all you can do. And then pray. And I did. I wrote a thank you card, which was interesting. And then I prayed, and I let it go. And 2 weeks later, I got a call, and they said, you got the job. I found out later because I said, why did you give me this job? My interview was a bomb. I was so anxious and so nervous. And I just let all of that get the better of me. And she said, it was between you and this other girl, and she was a lot more eloquent than you are. And she said, and I could tell she would be really good, but you were so excited and so enthusiastic, and that thank you card sealed the deal.
Mm-hmm. A thank you card.
And she held on to it. When I left the organization, she brought it out to show people. She said, I always held on to this because I was like, this is a brown noser. In Australia,
it's not really done here.
It's culturally, it's a very different thing. However, it was received well. And we prayed about it. So, at the right intention.
And you write really well, Rachel.
Well,
you're really gifted at writing too.
We get there. But the point is, those are some of the things that I talk about in the book. A lot of embarrassing moments, but a lot of learnings as well. And how God works with you. I want this job. How do I show up in this meeting? This person really doesn't like me. Like, what can I do to make this part of my job easier? Those are the things I learned along the way. And particularly as young women, we're not always given that little roadmap. Professionally. So those are some of the things I learned.
And another great graduation present for girls.
Thank you. Available wherever your books are sold. Okay, what have we got now?
Okay, so you actually put me onto this guy. He's the FBI negotiation guy. His name is Chris Voss. I don't know if he's a Christian. There might be a little bit of language with this gent, but this book is so good. I even looked up him on Masterclass.
I've looked it up.
He was that good.
So good.
And one of the things I thought was so cool was before he even got in, he wanted to be an FBI negotiator. Even how he got in, he was already kind of working in there, but not quite. And they said, we want you to go be an equivalent of like a lifeline counselor. So you'd have to, the call-in suicide. That's what he did. That's how he got his
Because
intro.
he was too young. He said, I want to do this. And I said, everybody wants to do this. There's a waiting list. Why are you so special?
That's right.
And he just kept coming and saying, I want to do this. And the woman who was in charge said, okay, you go and volunteer
at the suicide
squad. Which is a midnight, all
you
hours.
You do all hours. And he did that for, I think, 7 or 8 months. And it was interesting, the trainer who does that, and I think because I've done a little bit of this type of training, they go, when you stop making it about you and making it about the client, that's when you'll start getting somewhere. And I've never heard it said quite that way in all my training, but his training said that. And I went, that is so true, because it's not about you. It's obviously about the person on the other end. And you think, well, I'm here to listen. But it was just so fascinating. That's how we got in. And then the amount of stories, the amount of situations that he's lent into this professionally, it is a fascinating, wonderful read. You have to read it if you're interested at all in professional development.
It will help you, especially for people pleasers.
And negotiate.
Hello.
And negotiating. Like, so I had to do a negotiation, 3 weeks ago with, it was a situation, a work situation, and was using these techniques, and it worked. And in that room, I'll just say it did flip, and they go, what can we do to keep you in that?
Okay. I love Steve Harvey's Jump.
Oh, I love Steve Harvey.
This is so good. Now, if you don't know Steve Harvey, who Steve Harvey is, most people do, he's a comedian and he's a Christian. And I just love the way he communicates his faith very authentically. But he uses as, this is how I succeeded because I had God. I have a vision, and, Habakkuk, it says, write down your vision, look at it every day, write it plainly and clearly. And he said, that has been the premise of my success. And he talks so openly. And there's this one story that I love that he shares about, he'd been living in his car. He was down to like $30 or whatever it was. And he got a call from, was it the night show? It was like,
it was in New York, and he was like in Florida or something.
And he barely had any money. And he said, I had no money to get there. They said, if you come here, we will get you on the night show.
It was huge.
It's a huge gig, would be game changing. And he had no money to get there. And he said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And he said, I've got to give up because I have just enough money to get home. And he got that call, and he said, I felt sick. And then he got another call, and they said, if you come to this comedy night, we'll give you $200, which was the cost of the flight that he needed to get to New York. And so he said, this is what I did to make it happen. He got to the show, and they're like, you can't come in. It's like 18 hours before your gig. And he's like, I had nowhere else to go, man. I needed food. And I was like, can I please just wait out here? No one will see me. So he had to wait for like 18 hours. It was extraordinary because he was about to give up. He'd had no money. He'd run out of resources. He was exhausted. And God came through right at that moment where I'm ready to quit. And God has a plan. When you're out of resources, there's only God, but God is more than enough. He knows where you're at. And I love that because that is the power of following through. That is the power of showing up. And it is a jump. We've been there. It is a jump, and there is fear, there's anxiety, I don't see where I'm going to land. And it's jumping to, you know what, God has given me this gift. How far can I go with it? That's kind of the question. How far can I take this? And that's all I ever do. How far can I go here? And sometimes I go way too far. And God's like, I did not call you to do that. Come on back, Ray. But that really encourages me because no matter where you're at, you've got a gift. And that's all he did. When he discovered his gift was comedy, he just said, I'm going to take this as far as I can.
Well, even how he discovered his gift was comedy.
He said, someone dragged me to a comedy show. I was poor. I never went to anything like that.
Yeah.
I didn't know what they did.
Yes.
And then he saw someone get on stage and he said, my friend looked at me and said, what are you thinking about? He said, I saw myself getting angry because I knew exactly what they were doing. I knew exactly how they were doing, and I couldn't believe this was a job. How did I not know about it? I know what you're doing. And I thought, I've had those moments. And I think those moments are you recognizing, I know how to do that.
Well, you're gifting.
You're gifting, but it's
for the first time you realize that's your gifting.
That's
you didn't know that before.
You didn't know it before. And so that anger sometimes like, why am I angry when I'm watching this? Because you know you can do it or you can do it better. That's not, I don't think that's.
It's almost displaced anger of going.
It's not. It is. It's like a grief of like, why only now am I discovering this? Anger is usually grief in another form, but it's because I've had those moments. I'm like, I really want to be happy for this person, but I'm feeling anger and I'm not jealous towards you. But and so I think sometimes we go, oh, follow your jealousy. I heard that. And I'm like, I don't think it's jealousy. It's not envy. It's recognizing I have what they have and I can do something similar. And it should inspire us. But sometimes when we feel like we've been held back from it or we didn't know it, it can lead to something else. Which anyway, that's a whole separate conversation. But I recognize myself in that because I'm like, oh, that too is an identifier of purpose. So it can be that I cried because it felt so good when I was on stage, or it can be I felt angry when I saw them up there and do this one thing because I thought I can do that. I've got that gift too. Why am I not using it? So anyway, but no, tell the story of the third grade teacher, and then
Steve Harvey became super successful, but apparently his third grade teacher had said that he'd never amount to anything, and I can't remember the exact words, but
he said, "I want to be on TV," and she laughed at him and said, "That will never happen."
That would never happen. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And so when he became successful, he sent her a TV in the mail.
Every year for Christmas, he sends her a new TV every year.
Every year. I don't know if he is still doing this, but I went, wow. Just to remind her, hey, not only am I on TV, you're getting one too.
You're getting one too. I love
that. I mean,
it's so beautiful. It's like when they just dump things on your lawn. She probably only needed one, but isn't that interesting? We just love him. Anyway. And then last but not least, Wendy, you've got a cool devotion there.
This is just a devotional
Barbara
that actually Mom
for us.
got this for all of us. And it's Charles Spurgeon, and I want to make sure I'm getting that right. And it's the King James, and it has a morning and evening piece. And I really, really enjoyed it. I had behind my bedroom door, I'd have a little place that I would do this in the morning. And I've done it like over 2 years, and it's just amazing. I couldn't, obviously the Bible, but I could not speak about books without, leaning into that and having that spiritual practice too. So whatever devotion you have, definitely lean into it. But this was one of my all-time favorites.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us for our book club today. We'd love for you to share your favorite books that inspire you or encourage you in whatever season of life you're in. This has been really fun. Thanks for joining, Wendy.